Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Candace. Today we are going to be talking about 10 different areas in which we can pray for our future spouses. But before we get started, we're going to go ahead and pray for this video and then we'll dive right in. God, thank you so much for creating the gift of marriage and for giving us companionship here while we're in this life before we get to come and be with you. Thank you for each and every single person who's listening to this video right now. I pray that this would guide them and help them expand their prayer life with you to fight on behalf of their future spouse. I ask that this video would be all of you and none of me, and that you would take my personal things out of it and just have my words be yours, Papa. I ask in Jesus Christ's name. Okay, so you've probably heard of the concept or videos talking about praying for your future spouse, right? Before we get into the actual ways to pray for them, I want to put a little caveat in here. Okay, it is very easy. I'm specifically talking to the ladies here, okay? It is very easy to get caught up so much in the idea of a future marriage and a future spouse that it's very easy to turn it into an idol in your life. And I just want to caution you guys against that because, you know, God doesn't stand for any idols in our life. So if you are taking praying for your future spouse to an extreme of, you know, that's like the only thing you talk to God about, it might become an issue between you and God. So it's a good thing to pray for your future spouse, right? Just make sure that your relationship with God is number one. All right? Okay. So on the whole idea of praying for our future spouses, you know, the Bible specifically talks about different spouses who are already married praying for each other. You know, like Isaac went to God on behalf of Rebecca, right? So she could conceive and have kids. Other husbands did the same thing. The Bible just doesn't talk much about, you know, like the before you get married part of life. But it does have basic principles on praying. You know, 1 Thessalonians 5:17 says pray without ceasing, right? So we're supposed to be talking to God without ceasing, like having him a part of our lives and praying for things and for people, right? Praying for people who are sick, praying for people who are struggling with something, right? Praying for family and friends and all of that. In James, it talks about praying for those who are sick. And it says, you know, in James 5:16, it says, the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much, right? So when we pray, it does do things, it moves things. Praying is a spiritual practice of basically asking God to fight our battles for us, right? Because ultimately we're not fighting against flesh and blood. In Ephesians 6, we'll start with verse 12. It says, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with the truth, and having on the breastplate of righteousness, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith you shall be able to quench all of the fiery darts of the wicked. And take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereto with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints. Right? So we're supposed to be praying because what it does is it fights on behalf of the people we're praying for, right? It fights for them spiritually. It asks God to move and make things happen. And doing that for a future spouse is a good idea, right? Like, if you would like to have kids later on in life, you can pray for them before they show up, right? just to start protecting them in prayer and asking God to put a hedge of protection around them and all of that. It's the same sort of thing with future marriage, okay? And since most human beings do end up getting married, I think this is a good thing just to put in practice. If you have a desire for marriage in your heart, it's very likely God's the one who put it there, and if he put it there, you're probably going to get married, so might as well start praying for this person ahead of time. Now, I know a lot of people, when they first start praying for a future spouse, right, they're going to pray a lot of the prayers like, God, please send this person to me soon. God, please, have them meet my need this way and my needs this way, and have them be this tall and this handsome, and you know what I'm talking about, right? The 10 ways we're going to talk about today are ways that are not selfish, okay? So these prayers are specifically for the other person's good. These prayers, these are like bigger topics of prayers, and then you can break them down into smaller pieces and fully cover this person head to toe in prayer for their own good, right? Not out of a selfish motivation, but genuinely because you want this person to have a good life, right? All right, we're going to dive right in and start with number one. Number one, the first area to pray for is God's will. That God's will be done in their life, right? Whatever that may mean between God and them, but that God's will would be done in their life. So you pray that God's will be done with their job. God's will be done with their health. God's will be done with wherever they live. God's will be done in how they conduct themselves with other people, that they will seek out God's will during the day and want to do it, God's will should be the number one. And yes, it's number one for a reason. It's kind of in the number one spot because it is the most important thing. The rest of the list can go a little intermingling, but this is definitely number one. Number two to pray for is their relationship with God, right? Not just that God's will happen in their lives, but that they will seek God, right? That they will seek God's face. And that your future husband will go and ask God for wisdom and for help making decisions in his life, and that he would just go and take to God all of his hurts and his hang-ups and anything he needs healing from, and that he would just have this open and honest communication with God that would develop that relationship, and that there would be trust there. I mean, you could take this and dive into a whole bunch of things praying for his relationship with God, right? But the relationship with God, of course, is foundational. It's foundational to how he's going to live his life. It's foundational to how he's going to end up leading you once you're married. So again, it's one of the biggest things to pray for. Number three is praying for your husband's purpose in life. For men, a lot of the time, their worth is directly connected to their purpose, right? How they feel about themselves and how they feel about their life is connected to their purpose in life. And of course, the only purpose that's going to fully satisfy them is whatever God's purpose is for their life, right? So praying that God would lead them in the direction of their purpose, praying that God would teach them what they need to know in order to fulfill that purpose, that God would give them in the areas that is needed for him to do that purpose well, right? That God would send him help if he needs help in that purpose. That God would connect him with the right people to make that purpose happen. You could, again, dive into it. But for God's purpose to be done in their lives and for them to want to do God's purpose, right? You can pray for all of that. Number four is to pray that your future husband, or if you're a guy watching this, you could pray for your future wife too. Sorry, my voice is a little funny today, but praying for wisdom on behalf of that person, praying that God would give your future spouse wisdom when it comes to stewarding their finances, when it comes to stewarding relationships, family relationships, friendships, that he would give them wisdom in their day-to-day decisions of what to do, that he would give them wisdom when it comes to any major decisions like where they're going to live or what they're going to do, or, that he would give them wisdom in how to deal with conflict, right? That he would give them healthy boundaries, wisdom so they know how to have healthy boundaries with people, wisdom in their friendships, that they would cultivate good, godly friendships, and that if there is a friendship that's not doing them any good, that they would be able to have the wisdom to back away from it, stuff like that. Number 5, praying for their character development, right? That they would develop the character traits of a godly man, or if you're a dude, of a godly woman, right? That they would develop, patience and generosity, and that they would develop leadership skills and just good relationships with people, and that they would follow the character traits that are exemplified in the Bible, right? That they would be brave, that they would be bold, that they would, tell other people about Jesus, whatever. Again, you could go into all the character traits and pray for each and every single one separately. There's plenty to pray for. That's when it says, pray without ceasing. A lot of people are like, oh, well, what in the world would I talk about with him all day long? I'm giving you a whole list of tons of things that you could go ahead and pray for. Number 6, praying for his family, okay? Whether God has told you who this person is or not is irrelevant, really, when it comes to praying this list. You can pray for his family, whether he has a family or he's adopted or he's the only child or this or that, you might not know. But you can pray that he has good family ties, right? That his family is walking after God, and if they don't know God, that they would come to know God, and that he would be a light to them, right? You could pray that his family would be close to one another, that they would have good traditions, and that they would be good at communication and conflict resolution and fill in the blank, X, Y, and Z. Number 7, friendships and mentors. Praying that he would have good friendships, right? Other good godly men, right? Who are in his life that will lift him up, that will encourage him, that will point him back to God whenever he's having a problem. Praying that he would have older godly men, right, who could mentor him and share their life experiences with him to give him even more wisdom, coming back. They kind of intermingle all these, but so that way he would have people to look up to, right, and people to look up to and be like, okay, I kind of want to develop a character trait like that. I like the way that this person does this, people in their lives who will pray for them, right? That will encourage them, just that, who will be really good friends to them. Number 8, for this man or woman, if you're a guy watching this, that your future spouse's health, right, would be covered. So physical health, right? Their physical health from top to bottom, their emotional health, their mental health. Again, you could pray, ask God. Honestly, this one is one of the ones I think specifically that you could do this with all of them too, but with this one specifically, I would ask God, be like, hey God, is there something specific you want me to pray for concerning my spouse with their health, whether it be physical, mental, emotional, right? God will lead you. It might be, you might start spiritually fighting against the spirit of depression in your spouse, or anxiety, or, indecisiveness, or whatever it may be. God might lead you to pray for them because they recently had a broken heart. You might not know about it necessarily, but if God leads you to pray for that person's heart and that they would be comforted, then do it, right? Praying for all of the things, that way they are covered, right, in prayer. Because when they're covered in prayer, they're going to have a better life, just in general, okay? We're going to move on. Number 9 is praying for the future marriage dynamic and courtship dynamic. whatever specifically it is, that you really feel led to pray for in this. You could be led to pray that this man develops leadership skills, right? That he has confidence to be able to pursue you boldly, right? That he would be the kind of person who loves you but is also willing to have good conversations with you and take your opinion into consideration, but ultimately make a decision, like all of the little things that you worry about, whatever it is that you're worrying about, okay, in a future marriage, whatever situations come to mind, like, oh, but what if this happens? Pray for it. Why? Because when you're covering it in prayer, you're protecting that future marriage already. Number 10, all right, is to pray against any plans of the enemy when it comes to your spouse. Pray that God would protect them, right? That God would put a hedge of protection around them and give them some beefy guardian angels to kick the butt of any evil nonsense that tries to come and derail their plans for life, just to pray against any delays, any stumbling blocks that the devil might put in front of them, things like that. Honestly, I think when we're praying these kinds of prayers, right, if you notice, all the prayers on this list are for the other person's well-being, right? They're not prayers that are prayed out of selfish ambition or, hey, God, I want this person to be exactly this tall and look like this and blah, blah, blah. They're prayers that are actually for the other person's good. And God will honor that. God honors our heart postures when we are diligently praying for someone. And I think it's important to pray for them, right? You're covering them in spiritual armor, right, before you even end up together. And that can only lead to good things for both your future spouse as well as yourself. I think that's all I got today, guys. It's kind of a shorter video. I hope this has inspired you in some way to amp up your prayer life a little bit. See you guys next time.